She didn't flinch when the hand hit her shoulder. That was the moment that changed everything. Not what happened after, not the storm, not the iron gate swinging open in the rain. The moment Vivian Cole stood in that garden with her chin level and didn't step back. A woman who had spent her career giving other women a voice in rooms that tried to silence them. And here, in her own home, for 2 years, she had chosen silence. Not because she was afraid, because she was calculating. Vivian Cole is a Black maternal health advocate. She fights insurance denials, dismisses biased hospital staff, and presents survival data to city councils on behalf of Black mothers who weren't believed when they said they were dying. She is used to hostile rooms. She is used to being the only one in the room who already knows the answer. Her husband is Min-jae Park, known in certain circles as the Fortress, a man with a coiling serpent tattooed up the side of his neck and a reputation for never moving until the moment was exactly right. He married Vivian in a civil ceremony with no family present. His mother, Park Soon-hee, has never forgiven either of them for that. For 2 years, Vivian absorbed it. Sunday mornings, moved coffee mugs, cutting remarks delivered in the calm voice of someone certain of their own authority. She absorbed all of it, until the Sunday morning she didn't. And Min-jae was watching from the balcony. What he had already known for 3 weeks, and what his mother had no idea he knew, is what turned a Sunday morning coffee into something neither woman expected. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click Join to become a member and help our channel. The highlighter was almost out of ink. Vivian Cole pressed it across the third statistic on the page. Maternal mortality rates. Black women versus white women in the same zip code, same hospital, same insurance tier. And the line came out pale, almost invisible. She pressed harder. It still faded. She set the highlighter down and found a pen instead. The binder in front of her was 3 inches thick. She had 18 months inside those pages. Tomorrow morning, she would stand at the City Health Council table and make those pages matter. The kitchen was warm. Morning light came through the tall windows and laid itself across the marble in long white rectangles. She heard the hall door open before she saw anything. Park Soon-hee moved through the kitchen the way she moved through every room in this house, as if she had built the walls herself. She didn't speak. She walked to the counter, lifted the kettle, filled it with a precision that communicated that everything here operated on her schedule. Then she crossed to the table, picked up Vivian's coffee mug without looking at it, and placed it 6 inches to the left, clearing space, rearranging the room back into the shape she preferred. Vivian watched the mug being moved. She reached out and picked it up again. She did not say anything. She had made this calculation 412 mornings in a row. It was a small calculation. Move her things. Be moved. Pick them up. Keep going. It was the cost of staying. She had decided the cost was worth it for reasons that lived in a separate room of her chest. The room where Min-jae kept his jacket folded over her chair when she worked late, where he had once sat on the floor of her old apartment eating takeout noodles and reading her draft report aloud to her while she fixed the margins. She'd married that man. The woman at the counter making tea was the tax on him. Park Soon-hee sat down on the opposite end of the table and opened her phone without another glance at Vivian. They sat that way for 20 minutes. Outside, the garden was the only neutral ground in the house. Stone paving, 2 iron chairs and a table, a stone wall covered in dark ivy. Sunday coffee in the garden had been Min-jae's idea when they first moved in together. A ritual, he said. Something that would become a habit before it became a tradition. It had become neither. What it had become was a weekly test that Vivian consistently passed by not reacting. Sun-hee set her teacup down and crossed one leg over the other. "Women from your background," she said, with the calm of someone reading from a document, "always mistake a man's house for their own destination." The birds in the garden kept moving. The ivy moved. Vivian's coffee cup was still warm in both hands. She had heard this before, in different forms. The house isn't yours. The name isn't yours. He chose you because he was lonely, and loneliness passes. She had absorbed every version, stored it, said nothing. For 2 years, she had been storing it. The weight had been adding up in a way that she was, professionally, very familiar with. It was exactly the accumulation she documented in her binder, the weight that women are told to carry without letting it show, the invisibility of the load. Vivian set her cup on the table. Black women die in childbirth at 3 times the rate of white women in the same delivery room, she said. Her voice was the same voice she used at the council table, level, clear, carrying the full weight of what she was saying without theatrical emphasis. Same hospital, same income bracket, same zip code. Their pain is rated 2 points lower on average when reported to staff. Their symptoms are dismissed at a documented 58% higher rate. They are invisible until something goes catastrophically wrong, and then they are statistics. She looked at Park Sun-hee. That is the background I come from. The background where you survive by being seen and punished for it at the same time. Park Sun-hee's teacup had stopped moving. Vivian continued. I have presented this data to hospital boards, to city councils, to insurance panels, to 12 separate government committees. I have been told I am exaggerating in all of those rooms. I am presenting it again tomorrow. I am not exaggerating. She picked up her coffee. And I have never mistaken this house for a destination. I chose it. There is a difference. Something moved across Park Sun-hee's face. Not agreement, something closer to the expression of someone who has thrown a standard punch and found the other person already out of the way. She stood up. She pointed to the iron gate at the far end of the garden path. Get out, she said. Her voice did not waver. It never wavered. It was the same voice that had told household staff they were being dismissed, the same voice that had once instructed lawyers, the same voice that believed its own authority required no foundation. You have embarrassed this family enough. Go. Take your files and your speeches and go back to wherever you think you belong. Because it is not here. Vivian did not move. This, Park Sun-hee said, and her open palm struck Vivian's shoulder. Not a full swing, a flat shove of command, the kind used to move furniture, is not your home. On the second-floor balcony above them, holding a black ceramic mug, Min-jae Park went completely still. He did not shout. He did not lean over the railing. He set his coffee mug on the stone rail with the same care he used to set a weapon down before a negotiation. Deliberate, controlled, communicating nothing to anyone watching. He turned and walked inside. Below, Park Sun-hee's palm landed on Vivian's shoulder a second time. I said, leave. Vivian did not step back. She stood in the garden with her chin up and her hands at her sides, and she did not move, not because she was frozen, but because stepping back from this specific woman in this specific moment was a concession she had decided 2 years ago and again this morning she would not make. The garden smelled like wet stone and coming rain. Somewhere in the ivy, something small and alive kept moving. Min-jae came down the grand staircase at his own pace. Not slow, not fast. The pace of someone who has already made the decision and is walking toward the execution of it. David Soon, crossing the foyer with a leather portfolio, saw his employer's face and stopped walking. He pressed himself against the wall near the garden entrance without being asked. Min-jae pushed the French doors open and stepped out into the garden. The sound of it, the brass handle, the weighted glass, the precise click of a door opened by someone who is not in a hurry, stopped Park Soon-hee mid-sentence. She turned. Vivian turned. He stood in the doorway. His charcoal shirt had the sleeves rolled up. He was in bare feet on the warm stone. His coffee was still upstairs. He looked at his mother. He did not look at Vivian. Park Soon-hee began to speak. She switched to Korean, the register she used when she wanted privacy from Vivian, the one she had used for 2 years to speak about Vivian in her presence as if she were furniture. She started to explain. She used words like dignity and family and what he built and what she protected. Her voice had its usual steel. Min-jae listened. He stood with his hands relaxed at his sides, the coiling serpent tattoo still on his neck, and he listened to every word she said. The garden went very quiet. When she stopped, he looked at her. Not the way he looked at Vivian, which was different, warmer at the edges, even now. He looked at his mother the way he looked at a problem he had finally solved. He said 4 words in Korean. "Nyon 이제 더 있지." You are no longer here. The phrase had a specific use in the Park Syndicate. It had been used at exactly 7 dinners in the past 15 years. Everyone present at those dinners knew what came after it. Park Soon-hee knew it better than anyone. She had sat at every one of those dinners. She had once, 30 years ago, nodded in approval when her husband first used it. The color left her face the way water leaves a glass that's been tipped sideways. Slowly. Completely. Vivian did not speak Korean. She had learned about 12 words in 2 years, the ones that came up at meals, the ones Min-jae used in his sleep, a few that the household staff repeated often enough to stick. She did not know this phrase, but she could read Park Soon-hee's face, and what she read there was the first crack she had ever seen in 63 years of composed, weaponized certainty. She thought, he is choosing not to choose. She thought, the silence is neutrality. She had seen neutrality from powerful men before. She knew what it looked like. She knew the specific absence of it in a room when nothing was going to change. She thought, this is it then. Vivian's hands moved to the folder on the garden chair. She picked it up with both hands. She curled it against her chest the way you hold something that matters. Not clutched in panic, but secured, close, because it is the thing you are keeping. 18 months. 147 pages. 312 black mothers and the disparities that had come within inches of killing them. She was going to present this tomorrow. She would present it from somewhere. She had presented from harder places. She looked at Park Soon-hee, not in anger, not in appeal, in something quieter and more final, the way you look at a door you are closing yourself before someone else has the chance to. Then she turned and walked toward the French doors. Her heels were quiet on the garden stone. She walked the way she always walked, upright, unhurried, carrying everything with her. David Soon was visible in the doorway. His face held something she didn't have time to read. He stepped aside. She crossed the threshold. Min-jae's hand closed around her wrist. Not forceful. Precise. 2 fingers and a thumb, at the pulse point, like someone pausing a clock. She stopped. He turned her toward him. His face was not the strategic blankness from the garden. It was something more careful. He held up his phone. The recording was playing. His mother's voice, at the dinner table, 2 years ago, speaking Korean to one of his associates across the table, while Vivian sat 2 seats down, eating quietly. "She is manageable. She will be gone in a year." The associate laughing. The sound of wine glasses. He scrolled. His mother's voice again. A phone call, 3 weeks ago. A number traceable, he had confirmed, to the mansion landline, routed through a forwarding number his mother had used before without understanding it left a signature. The call was to the main line at Vivian's nonprofit. His mother's voice, flattened and formal, giving a false name, reporting fabricated complaints about a senior staff member, professional misconduct, inappropriate conduct with a donor, documentation irregularities. All fabricated, all delivered in the clear and certain voice of someone who had decided that removing Vivian from her career was more reliable than removing her from the house. The call had been placed the day before Vivian's city council presentation, the same presentation that sat in the folder she was holding against her chest right now. Vivian stood in the doorway between the garden and the house. The folder was in her left hand. Her right wrist was in Min-jae's grip. She listened to the recording until it finished. She looked up at him. He looked back at her. Whatever he had held in for 2 years was visible now in the specific set of his jaw. Not rage, something colder and more patient. The thing that had let him wait until the exact right moment and not act before it. 3 weeks, he said. I needed a witness. He meant himself. He had waited to watch it happen in front of his own eyes before he moved. Because in his world, what he personally witnessed was admissible. What was told to him secondhand was manipulation. He had learned that distinction from the same woman now standing in the rain-threatening garden behind them. He let go of Vivian's wrist. He walked back out through the French doors. The iron gate at the end of the garden path swung open. The storm broke without introduction. No warning roll of thunder, just the sky releasing what it had been holding all morning. Rain hitting the stone driveway in hard, flat percussion. Min-jae walked to his mother. He placed one hand light at her elbow, the exact tone, Vivian would later realize, that a parent uses to guide a child somewhere they do not want to go. He spoke quietly in Korean. Later, when she asked him what he had said, he translated it this way. The gates stay locked until you understand that Vivian Cole is the only woman in this house who chose her name here. You were born into mine. She walked into it. Park Sun-hee stood at the edge of the open gate. The rain had already flattened her silver-streaked hair against her cheeks. She stood straight, the way she always stood, because the posture was the last thing to go. She looked past her son at Vivian in the doorway. Vivian looked back at her. Not in triumph. In something steadier than triumph. The thing you feel when something that has been pressing against you for 2 years finally lifts. Not joy, just the weight of its absence. The specific lightness of being right and being seen being right in the house where you had been made to feel wrong since the first morning. Min-jae walked back to the French doors. He shrugged off his charcoal shirt and settled it across Vivian's shoulders over the ivory dress, his hands resting briefly at her arms. She turned to look at the gate, at the iron bars, at the rain on the other side of them. Park Sun-hee did not move from where she stood. Vivian turned back to the kitchen. Her binder was on the table where she had left it. The pen, the pages, 147 pages that tomorrow would stand in front of a room of people whose job was to say no and be made to say yes instead. She sat back down. She picked up the pen. The gate remained closed. The presentation would be the best she had ever given. Vivian Cole knew the data by heart. Black women dismissed at a 58% higher rate, pain rated 2 points lower, invisible until something goes catastrophically wrong. She had presented those numbers to hospital boards, city councils, insurance panels, 12 government committees. She had spent her career making sure other Black women were seen in rooms designed to look through them. And every morning, she sat at that kitchen table at sunrise, binder open, highlighter in hand, fighting for every woman except the one in her own mirror. Maybe that sounds familiar. You show up for everyone. You document the problem, prepare the case, carry the weight. You've been the most prepared person in every room you've walked into for years. And somewhere in all of that, in all the early mornings, and the presentations, and the quiet endurance, your skin, your glow, the woman you see when no one else is watching, got pushed to the last page of the binder. Here is what Vivian learned inside that Korean household for 2 years, whether she knew it or not. Korean women have built an entire culture around one belief: that the woman who carries the most deserves the most intentional care, not as a reward, as a foundation. 45 Plus was written for the woman who has been advocating for everyone else and is finally ready to advocate for herself. Not a generic skincare routine, a system built around the specific biology of melanin-rich, mature skin. The skin the beauty industry spent decades pretending didn't need its own science. AM and PM routines rooted in K-beauty philosophy. The 15 Korean star ingredients that actually work for your skin. Glass hair rituals for type 4 hair. A complete Jjimjilbang home spa. 12 botanical teas that work on your skin from the inside out. Vivian sat back down at that table and picked up her pen. The presentation would be the best she had ever given. Now it's your turn to sit back down and show up for her. Scan the QR code on your data. This is what it is clearly including between interested and Bigs Up development, or find the link in the description below, or check the pinned comment. The fortress was always hers. And so is this. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever spoken your truth in a room that was designed to silence you, and only been heard because someone was watching who you didn't know was there? Have you ever stayed quiet in a space that cost you something and had to ask yourself whether the silence made you a hypocrite? Have you ever been the person standing at the gate, realizing too late that the fortress you thought you controlled was never yours to begin with? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, justice, and the power of being witnessed, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click Join to become a part of our community and help the channel.